and then start our meeting tonight. I want to welcome everybody for being here. Looks like we have a loyal, hearty crowd tonight. Day after Labor Day, I'm sure it's hard to get back in the swing of things. Ms. Kinzer, if you will, call the roll. Well, let's figure out, you may have other important things to say this afternoon.
That's scary. Ms. Parker. Here. Ms. Kinzer's here. Mr. Harlan.
Here.
Mr. Fulbright.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Present.
Ms. Irvin.
Here.
Mr. Sims.
Here.
Mr. Hooper. Here. Mr. Howell. Here. Mr. Lindsay. Here. Mr. Dudley. We have more than a quorum.
Good deal. You got good votes tonight. And I do want to take a moment to welcome our new board member from District 3, Mr. Harlan. Thank you for being here tonight. I don't guess you're doing us a favor. This is your new part-time job, so we're glad to have you as a part of our group. Mr. Harlan was sworn in, I believe, the day after the county commission approved you, if I remember right. So I like to see that kind of eagerness, like to see that kind of dedication, and we're definitely glad to have you as a part of our school board here. With that said, if you would, please rise. We'll open our time with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. And the Pledge of Allegiance will be presented by Riverside Elementary, and we'll talk about the artwork next. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you can have a seat. If you notice, our artwork in front of us is presented to us as a gift from Spring Hill High School, the talented artists that are there. And Ms. Kinzer will let you critique it after the meeting if anybody would like to stay around for an art lesson. First order. Okay, even before we had topped the agenda, we're going to go ahead. This is the month where one lucky contestant gets to be school board chair for the next year. Ms. Kinzer, I'll turn the meeting over to you and let you handle the proceedings.
The floor is open, and I'd like to nominate Michael Fulbright. Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion for nomination to succeed and to elect him by acclamation? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. Fulbright, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to serve for another year. This time, I will open up nominations for Vice Chair of the School Board. Nominations are now open. Mr. Lindsay.
I'll nominate Ms. Kinzer.
Okay, we have a nomination for Ms. Kinzer to serve as Vice Chair. Any other nominations? Seeing none, do I have a motion for nominations to cease and Ms. Kinzer be elected unanimously? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Ms. Kinzer, you have done very well filling in for me whenever I needed to go on vacation, and I'll try to do that more often. Next position is Chair Pro Tem. This position has not had much responsibility until last week when Mr. Howell was lucky enough to fill in for a meeting, chair that meeting for us. So I will at this time take nominations for Chair Pro Tem.
I nominate Mr. Howell.
I have a nomination of Mr. Howell. Any other nominations? I have a motion that nominations cease and Mr. Howell be elected Chair Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Howe, congratulations. The election of the TLN representative, and Ms. Shirley, you may have to remind me exactly what this is and who this is. Or Mr. Williver, either one.
This is your liaison to the General Assembly. This is the person that serves as your point of contact for any legislation ongoing that involves the schools or school-related activities.
Okay, thank you very much. And who served as that this past year? Was that Mr. Lindsay? Okay. All right, Mr. Lindsay thinks he did it the last year. It sounds like it. Are there any nominations for this position of TLN representative? Ms. Parker.
I nominate Mr. Hooper.
Okay. I have a nomination for Mr. Hooper. Any other nominations? Have a motion that nominations cease and Mr. Hooper be elected by unanimous consent. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. And I will say, and I think this may be why Mr. Lindsay didn't get bombarded with too much stuff, it is always the responsibility of each school board member to contact their representatives and stay informed of what happens at the legislative level. But we do appreciate Mr. Hooper taking the lead spot in that responsibility.
Mr. Fulbright.
Yes, Ms. Kinzer.
In the past, sometimes we have gone to the legislative day that TSBA has, and I would urge him to look into that. It's an overnight thing. Go and meet with the representatives that do. It really was an educational experience, but just to have that, I think that would really be something you might want to pursue.
Okay. There was an email sent out about that, I believe, last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. That is definitely, and I've done it with other groups, and that's an extremely valuable experience. Next item on our voting is sick bank trustee. And I believe that was Ms. Hopkins, if I'm not mistaken. I will open it up for nominations. Ms. Kinzer.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Irvin.
Okay. I have a nomination of Ms. Irvin for that position. Any other nominations? We're a mighty agreeable bunch this evening. All those in favor of closing the nominations and electing Ms. Irvin unanimously, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Our last item for voting is our sick bank alternative. And do I have a nomination for this position? Ms. Kinzer.
Let's nominate Mr. Sims.
I think that'd be great. Mr. Sims, you can always put this on your school board resume. Any other nominations for this position? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations and elect Mr. Sims as the alternative by acclamation, unanimous acclamation. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. Yes. And I was just passed a note. Ms. Parker, did you receive a special level 1 certification for school board? Congratulations on that. We like to celebrate all of our friends' accomplishments. All right, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Have a motion from Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Hooper. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote. We should have probably taught you how to use this before the meeting, I'm guessing. We don't do good on tutorials. Who would think we would know how to educate people? Could one of our technology folks scurry up here real quick? Okay, here we go. We are unanimous. All right, we have an agenda formally adopted. Next item is recognitions and announcements. Mr. Hickman, do we have any recognitions or announcements?
Yes, sir. Right now, there is still some embargo on some of the state testing that we did last year, but I do want to take this opportunity to really just say last year, we wanted to find out, first of all, we know that disrupted learning is one of the worst things you can do for students. And last year, we were running the numbers, and one of the things we found was that 78% of our students last year, at some point of the year, was quarantined, as well as 10% that were isolated. That's a lot of students and a lot of disruption, not even to count the teachers' isolations and disruption. But with that said, we know there was some learning loss, but we are very proud to say that, Maury County, the teachers and the employees of this district really knocked it out. And we did see this learning loss, but we have a lot to celebrate, and we're going to, hopefully, once it becomes all unembargoed, we're going to have a formal presentation to the board. But some of the things I can share are things such as, we did fall a little bit in our ELA, but not as much as most of the state. We did gain, however, in our math. We didn't fall, we gained in our achievement. Also, one of the big celebrations of this district is, TVAS. It shows how much a student grows. For the first time in a long time in Maury County, we're going to be designated a level 5, which is the highest you can be in TVAS on your designation. So we're really excited about that. Also, which I don't know how much I can speak about this, but I'll just kind of cover it on top because it is part of the embargo, is we had 5 schools that were either ATSI or TSI. We learned I learned late Friday night that out of those 5, 3 came off the list. We also have learned that our district will no longer be in needs improvement, and it looks like we're going to be not just the next step up, but 2 steps up, and we're going to be in a satisfactory district. So, just kudos to the principals, the assistant principals, the teachers, the EAs, the custodians, the cafeteria workers, the maintenance crew, just everyone in Maury County, because this is a huge celebration. It's coming off the cusp of a pandemic year, which was already, a lot of barriers for us anyway. So just proud to share that. And like I said, once we get everything unembargoed, we will be sharing a presentation with you.
Awesome. Well, that's a nice tease and a really nice way to start our meeting. Great news, it sounds like, coming down the highway there. Public delegations. Ms. Posey, is she here? I do not see her. Okay, we'll continue on. Staff reporting. Anything else to report? Okay. You see the consent items right there. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent items. Motion from Mr. Moore, second by Mr. Sims. Any discussion on any of the consent agenda items? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote. All right, unanimous. We have our consent agenda items passed. Under new business, we're moving on to finance. Anything you'd like to share with us?
We don't have anything on the agenda at the moment. The budget did come back from the state. It got approved on August 31st, so everything is posted. For the work session, we will have financials for the month of August presented and everything. So, and if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. I think that's the best news right there, that the budget was formally approved by the state. That's always something we eagerly await. Yes. Mr. Lindsay?
I just wanna point out in the financials, you don't have to answer anything, 'cause we'll talk about it again in a minute, but, had the final, everything was pretty much all said and done, in the June financials, and, we put $4.6 million in the fund balance from last year's budget, so just, that'd be helpful in a minute.
Okay, okay. Thank you for bringing that up. Instruction. Anything from instruction? Mr. Gaines? Not here? All right, do you have anything you wanna add? Okay. Human resource. We do have an item under that, salary study quote. You wanna tackle that one?
It's the salary study quote for, doing the salary study that was requested by, the board members. And we discussed it at the work session, so I don't know if there's any other questions that you all have that, before you need to vote on it and go, if you all choose to go forward with this.
Okay, we have the, quote in front of us. Do I have a motion to accept the quote as presented? Have a motion from Mr. Lindsay, second from Mr. Howe. Any discussion? I believe, if I remember right, there may have been a question on this, that's why it didn't make it to consent. Possibly. If not, seeing no other discussion, I believe we're ready to vote on it. All right, we have unanimous approval of the salary study quote. Zoning and facilities, Mr. Perriman.
Mr. Fulbright,
Yes, Ms.
can I
Parker.
ask one question on that?
Yes.
Will we have a budget amendment on that next time, or is that coming out of somebody's account?
I think, we will have to do a budget amendment for it, and so we'll have to present it at the work session. I was just making a note about that, so we'll bring it at the work session in October.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it could be the work session later this month, couldn't it?
My months are running together.
That's
I just
fine.
got back to work.
I understand. So the 21st, we'll see it again on the 21st.
I was quarantined for a whole 14 days, so I'm back today, so it's like I'm a little out of touch today still, so.
Well, we're glad you're back, and we look forward to seeing that and taking it up on the 14th. I mean, the 21st. All right, now, Mr. Perriman.
Good evening. You've got on the agenda tonight, funding for athletics and maintenance projects. There was some discussion at the work session about maybe taking some money from, fund balance once those numbers were finalized and looking at projects. There are two attachments. One is an athletic facility, project attachment that addresses the things that go to the standards you set when we adopted the facility standards. There's also the maintenance project list for year 1 through 3. If you remember, we asked for $4 million in capital money from the commission for maintenance, and that was not there. So this is just based off discussion from the work session on there for you to discuss and take any action you deem appropriate.
There's no price on any of these, have we?
That was gonna be my question. Can I get a motion and then a second, and then we'll further discussion? Have a motion for Mr. Lindsay. Is there a second for discussion?
Let me give you a motion.
Okay. Wait a minute. Let's back up a little bit. Before we get into making motions on anything, could you just go over this a little bit with us?
I can, and let me address the pricing at first. The reason we did not give pricing is that this is just at the board's discretion on how much money you would like to remove from fund balance. Anything that would be over $10,000 would have, or over 25, has to come back to you for approval. So we did not take the time to individually price everything that was on the list. Some are exorbitant as far as, larger projects that are a couple $100,000. Some are $5,000 or $2,000 projects. And so when we made the list, I can get you the numbers for each individual project, but because we weren't asking for a specific amount project-wise, and this is at your discretion, we just gave you the needs that were there rather than the cost of the needs. I will tell you that just through our numbers, the athletic number is about $2 million, and you have about $4.5 million of itemized, prioritized maintenance items that are on there. Now, we didn't expect $6.5 million, so again, that's why we didn't price each individual item, because it is purely your discretion what you may choose or choose not to give us.
I guess I would like, I get, what, are you asking us for a number to spend and then do projects up to that number, or?
Well, during the last work session, there was just discussion that once the, fund balance was finalized, there may be an ask to come from here. And again, we were just asked for a list at that time of projects that were out there that we knew of that needed to be done. So again, this is purely on you guys. Everything that's on there from the maintenance list is directly from the EMG or the Bureau Veritas list for years 1 through 3. Everything that is on the athletic improvement list goes to meet the standard that the board adopted for facilities. And again, we just pulled about $2 million on that and a little over $4.5 for the first year. We were kind of going off of loose guidance there. If you want numbers, I can give you numbers for each project. But again, anything over 25 has to come back for you to approve. Or if we did any sort of GMP on projects or anything like that, that would be yours to approve as well. And we weren't asking for a specific because we really didn't know what the fund balance would come back as. We just know that right now we have no maintenance money, since the commission did not fund that portion of our ask. And if you remember, we had $670,000 in the ask to the commission for athletics, and that was cut as well.
Okay. Now we'll, Mr. Howell.
So when we did this last for athletics, what we did was we simply said, here's $500,000, and we gave it to Mr. Pointer to spend. He completely prioritized the list, and he spent that $500,000 and got the maximum he could possibly get done with that set money. So I would imagine that's what we're looking at here on both of these, for maintenance and for athletics. We give them a set amount, and they do what they can do with that, and that's what I imagine that they're asking us to do here.
Go ahead, Mr. Hickman.
And as just a reminder, because of the enormous amount of facility maintenance and construction that we're doing, we chose to make sure that Mr. Pointer is now in Eric's department so they can work hand in hand instead of cross departments. So that's one reason it's coming through Eric again for the athletics.
Okay. I don't know what kind of guidance or vote or anything. I would be inclined to tackle the priority number ones off the maintenance.
And that's the priority for the items on maintenance, or have been prioritized by us, by Mr. Hall, through Tommy, in some cases through Mr.
Do you have any estimate of what those priority number ones would be versus the rest of the list?
If you look at the priority number ones only, it's about $2.5 million.
Okay.
And as far as the three, just means that out of the items that you had on the list, that's how we prioritize these items.
Okay. My last question would be, you said roughly the facilities were what, 2-something million?
For athletics.
Yeah, athletic.
Yes.
Does that include the money for the full service track? 'Cause that was well over $1 million.
It does not include the track. If you look at the attachment for athletics, it has the items that are included in that.
Okay, the track is on there.
Yes, it is. We didn't vote.
Okay, I didn't, my screen didn't pull those up automatically.
We didn't vote on that.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna take that off, potentially take that off the list temporarily then. All right, Mr. Lindsay.
This is just kind of the first step for us to free up money out of fund balance. Is we have to approve it at this here, then the county commission has to approve it, and then once those two approvals take place, then those guys can go to work and bring us back exactly what those numbers look like. And like I said, however they go about doing it, we have to approve each. If it's less than $25,000, we have to approve each individual project anyway. So, with that being said, I'll make a motion that we take $4 million out of fund balance, earmark $2 million for athletics, earmark $2 million for maintenance.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Mr. Howell seconds. Ms. Parker?
I was just curious on the priority list for some of these things. I mean, we've got Spring Hill High School. I thought that, based on discussions recently, are we going to be putting in an elevator at Spring Hill High School? Right. I'll just say, I don't necessarily have a problem taking money out of fund balance, although $4 million may be a little rich, I feel like, considering what our budget deficit is. And I will just say, we actually never voted on the track. I didn't make the motion on it, and I don't think anybody else here made a motion on it. So, but I do think that we need to really look at what we want to do with this and make sure, I mean, I understand giving it to Mr. Pointer and seeing how far we can stretch it, and I trust him to do that. But I also feel like, you know, for me personally, I would rather prioritize our high schools at this point and then work our way down. I think we're really far behind, and without some direction, I think we're just going to have a real scattershot approach that kind of concerns me at this point, because I feel like that's what we've done in the past, and we haven't really, we haven't been as targeted, I don't think, as we need to be.
Ms. Kinzer?
I have to agree with Ms. Parker. I think that's, I mean, it's our fund balance, and yes, we've had, you know, I don't know where $4 million out of it will put us, but I would be for doing what we asked the commission for, the $600-something thousand, or maybe up to $1 million for those projects. But the other on maintenance, because that absolutely, that has to happen. These other projects have already, the athletic project has been prioritized, but $4 million is just a little bit too rich for me. Maybe $1 million and two or something like that way. But I just hate to see us take that fund balance and feel like we can just take it down. You know, we didn't give our employees a raise because we didn't have any money, and you know, we couldn't do it. I understand that, but you need to turn around and have a fund balance that is in pretty good shape too, to just go out and say, oh, well, let's do this. I'd like to know what it's going to be spent for. I understand you'll have to bring it back to us, and we would have that opportunity to vote on it individually, but I'm sorry, I just feel like $4 million right now to take out of fund balance is too much.
Mr. Howell?
Just looking, I mean, I know for a fact that the athletic was, if you look at the majority of those are ADA compliance issues, paving parking lots, putting in, you know, cement under bleachers and whatnot. That's just ADA. I mean, that's not like we're going out here and, you know, putting AstroTurf on our fields. That's just trying to be compliant so that people with disabilities can have access to the same as anyone else at our fields. That's just basic. Like that shouldn't be something that we have outstanding. Like, that's something that we need to be doing. So as far as the athletics, you know, I can't see not funding. This is not even the whole plan for the athletics. I mean, you're talking about 3 years ago it was a $15 million plan, and this list right here that he's showing us is not $15 million. This is just a snippet of that $15 million. So, you know, I don't know what $2 million would do, but I know $1 million wouldn't do anything to this. And as far as if you look at the facilities, right off the bat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, are all ADA compliant issues. So in order to be ADA compliant, number one, we have to formulate a plan so that it shows that we're trying to be ADA compliant. And then number two, if we have the ability to fund those plans, you kind of have to fund those plans, or you kind of should fund those plans, I should say. But beyond that, I mean, I trust staff to make the decisions. They get paid to make these decisions. We can sit here and nickel and dime it to death, but I mean, this is the list that they presented. They've prioritized both of these lists. I think we should give them the maximum amount we possibly can. We put in $4.3 million this year. Next year, I'm sure we'll surpass that. So then we'll just have that much more money that the county commission is going to point at and say, look, you've got all this money over here, and they're going to ask us to have a bigger deficit next year. So we do have to use it, and it needs to be used for education, not just sitting over here to the side while we hold a bag of money.
All right, you stole my thunder, actually. I would like to see the athletic priorities divvied out between safety issues that need to be addressed versus other. I mean, like he was talking about with the ADA compliance. Some of these things, I see a paved parking area. That's a safety issue in my mind. That's not necessarily a athletic as much. Some of these other things, outfield fence, that could be strictly athletic. That's not safety or compliance. But I would like to see a little bit of that differentiation, and then also I would like to see a more firm number on the level 1 priority maintenance. And that's what I would be more inclined to go with. Ms. Parker?
Mr. Forward, say one thing.
Yeah, jump in on that.
Just so you know, the list that we presented to you for maintenance is from the EMG Bureau Veritas list. What we've done with this money in the past is, as we attack those things, money that's saved or issues that arise. If you remember, we were out of money when we ran into the septic issue at Hampshire. We had to go into fund balance for that. But at times when we've had maintenance money, if that money's available, that type of immediate need sometimes jumps above things that are on the list. 2 weeks ago, we had the rain that came in on the Saturday night, and we ended up with 4 inches of water in the elementary school at Santa Fe. Maintenance was down there. We left, I think, right at 2 o'clock that morning. We know we've got a little bit of work we've got to figure out on the front of that building. We may never get that much rain in an hour again at Santa Fe School, but if we do, we know we've got some issues down there. That's not on the Bureau Veritas list. But historically, that's what maintenance money, if an issue like that arose, we could address that item. We could come in and get money and look at it. Right now, what we're doing, since we don't have funds available, is looking at what can we do planning-wise and get some sort of cost where we have to come back and ask you for money out of fund balance. So part of what we would do is be really nimble with this list, and this is the list that we work from, but if something arises that is an immediate need, it comes from that money as well, and it keeps us kind of flowing a little bit quicker than we normally would.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lindsey?
Along those lines, taking money out of fund balance at the very least is a month-long process. I think Mr. Perman brings up a good point, but we have $16.8 million in fund balance today. We just put 4.6 in it in the last year. Our sales tax number for the month of July, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Shifra, but exceeded last year's number by $300,000. So I've always said we can either have needs or we can have a lot of money in the bank, but if we have both, we're not doing what we should be doing. And you guys know I officiate high school sports. I travel around all over, and we are so far behind when it comes to athletics and athletic facilities. We're not even close. And as Mr. Perman pointed out, he asked for $4 million this year. At budget time, he didn't get a dime of it. So by law, we have to keep Doug would cringe if he were here tonight, but, by law, we have to keep 3% in our fund balance, and that's gonna be somewhere in the $3.5 million range, and we have 16.8 today. We shouldn't have needs and money. We should have one or the other.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
I completely agree with you, Mr. Lindsay, on that. I guess what bothers me, though, is that when we have discussions before the county commission about what our needs are when it relates to capital, we were willing to just let them cross off $4 million. We were willing to just let them cross off $670,000 for athletics. And that's the part that I'm just saying, if we really, truly are prioritizing these things, and I don't disagree, ADA is very important, but why were we not making that argument to the commission so that we could have some discussion with them? And if they turned around and said, you're gonna have money in fund balance, turn around and use it, that's fine. Then we can also have a discussion about, hey, then why do we have to have a $4 million deficit in our operating budget? I mean, I'm not opposed to spending money. I know that Mr. Pointer actually is one of the few people that has a strategic plan. I just like to see how this plays into the strategic plan that he already has built out for athletics and arts. All these projects, I mean, I don't remember them being, I wasn't here at the work session, so it sounds like this document came out of the discussion that was at the work session. I'm just saying, I kinda would just like to have another discussion about it overall for our strategic plan. But ADA and those kind of things, those things have been on Budget Veritas or EMG for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So I don't disagree that they're important, but this board has not necessarily prioritized moving all of that stuff up to the top of the list. I'm not opposed to spending money, but I think there's a lot of things based on the needs that we have in our district that I just want to see how it all fits together before we start. I mean, we're talking about a salary study. I'm very curious what that's going to mean and what that's going to look like for what kind of pay we're going to need to pay our employees going down the road. And I'm not so sure. I don't usually like to pay salaries out of fund balance, but it's kind of what we're doing already, so maybe we need to have that discussion. I'm not really clear on the direction. I understand things are going to come back to us. $25,000, I agree, but I don't know, can you move a fence for $25,000 in the outfield? I don't know, maybe you can. Maybe that doesn't come before us. So I'm just trying to get a better idea of what all is going to happen before we just write a blank check.
Okay, it sounds like maybe where we're at with this is let's bring something back to the work session in 2 weeks. Oh, Mr. Sims? I don't know, people are yelling at me. You talk and then we'll figure it out.
I was just gonna ask Shifra, so if, with our budget, say funds were to stay the same, we're at about a $4.5 million deficit.
Yes, and I was looking at last year's audited, so 2020 audited numbers, we put back $2.4 million. This year, we put back $4.6 million. So if we just do the comparison on those two numbers, we've already put back $2.2 more million this year than we did last year. Now, last year, we did use $1 million something out of fund balance. That included, nurses, which was probably the biggest expense we did last year out of the fund balance was the nurses expenditure, and then, of course, the athletics funding that we did. We had some other smaller expenditures. We did close the books at $4.6 million this year. That is what we have. Of course, when the audit comes back, sometimes that number can go up or go down a little because they may account for certain things that we might get after August 31st that they may account as need to be put back into last year's funding versus where we can't put back after August 31st, we can't put anything back. That being said, our office, we looked at the fund balance numbers and all that, and we are comfortable with whatever the board, of course, decides to do with the fund balance. Somewhere between $2.5 to $3 million is a safe number for us. Just looking at our growth right now with sales tax and overall property tax as well, but the sales tax increase and just looking at the growth that we've had in 1 year of how much we've put back in fund balance just between 2020 and 2021. That's 2.5 to 3 is the safe number for us. Of course, as the board approves stuff, it will need budget amendments, and like Mr. Lindsay said, every fund balance budget amendment has to go through the board, and then it goes through the commission. So if there's any meetings that we have that get canceled, or postponed due to fall break or Thanksgiving or anything, you know, that type of stuff sometimes can take 4 to 8 weeks depending on how the meetings fall as well. So just something to put out there.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Hickman, how many current positions are we still, we've budgeted for at the beginning of the year, are we still lacking? Because that money is basically not being spent, so next year we'll have that in our fund balance or
That number is fluid, but we do have, and Jennifer, I'm gonna lean on you on this one. It's, the last count I had was at 20-something. Yes. Yeah. Picture. Yeah. Yeah, the major schools that we were worried about, we had about, we got EA Cox fixed, we just about have Whitthorne fixed, and we're very close to getting Central staffed. So we're making ways there, but that number stays so fluid every day, so, But to answer your question, what we instruction and I, we sat down and basically with the vacancies at the end of August, we would have enough in our balance to fund 3 whole teacher positions, just on the teacher line for the whole year, extra for that many vacancies for a month.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I was getting ready to kind of summarize where it looked like we were at. I think I was getting reminded lovingly that we had a motion on the floor, which I had not forgot about. But I would like to see this brought back up at the work session, but we do need to do something with this motion. So, Mr. Lindsay, would you like to reiterate the motion that we're getting ready to vote on?
Oh, just add, earmark 2 million for maintenance, 2 million for athletic facility.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Do we have any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote. It does, yeah, it does. Yes, it reaches 6. So that motion passes.
Chair Fulbright, I just want to make sure just for wording on that, make sure we're clear that that's not we didn't approve any projects. We're approving a request from the county commission. I just want to make sure we get exactly what we're doing here, because I know there was some discussion on it.
Thank you. Okay, moving forward. Any other things, Mr. Perriman, from your?
There's just a notice, several of you asked, McDowell did go up for sale on September 1st. We have folks reaching out to us daily about that, and it is up to September 30th is when we will open that and hopefully have a good report for you.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Do you all want us to bring a budget amendment back at the work session appropriating the 2 and 2 out of fund balance, or do you, is that what the motion is? Like, go ahead and do a budget amendment, taking it out of fund balancing, just putting it in the budget, or do we do budget amendments as projects get approved?
Honestly, it sounds like we just wrote 2 blank checks for $2 million
Okay.
out of the account, out of the fund balance accounts, one for maintenance, one for athletics.
okay, so there's two options, and that's one, I either actually put a budget amendment together that goes on the agenda, or we appropriate and verbally say out the whole budget amendment. That way it's clear in the notes that there is a budget amendment that wasn't on the agenda that did get approved. So I need to get GL codes for that, because if we're gonna approve, and if you want it to go to commission this month, now if you want it to go to commission in October, we have time to process that at the work session and then approve it at the October board meeting.
Well, I think we might have just bypassed our own work session, and
And that's what I'm trying to figure out, because there isn't a document for me to send to the commission, but if we are gonna produce a document that goes to commission, it needs to be verbally stated that we need this much taken out of, 1413900. 4 million needs to be taken out and appropriated to an athletics GL and a maintenance GL, and we can grab those GLs real quick. I'm sure Eric's got.
yeah, I mean, I think that's what we just did.
Okay, I just wanna say the GL's out there, because the audit will look at the minutes and say there wasn't a document attached, so we need to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, I feel like we need to say the GLs or what the information is in the budget document if there isn't actually a budget amendment attached. Yes, that's what okay, so, I don't know if we need it in the motion, but I do think it needs to be in the minutes somewhere, because if I take a budget amendment that's not on the agenda, audit will tag us like, hey, where's the budget amendment that you took to commission? So I think I'll give out the GLs real quick. I need to figure out the athletics one where we put the 500,000 last year real quick. Do you have that already, or? Okay. And then, of course, the fund balance is gonna be 141,39,000. So we can maybe put that in the minutes.
While she's pulling that, Mr. Fulbright, Mr. Hickman did ask me to tell the full board, I've told you this today and asked to discuss this with you after. We did open RFQs today for architects. We had 10 architects present to us, a RFQ to be examined. 9 of them did it correctly. One did not. So we have 9 that we will be moving forward, and I talked to Mr. Fulbright earlier and just asked him for direction on how he wants us to move forward on that. So following the meeting, we'll move forward. But we are into that process and timeline on the construction costs or projects for both the Santa Fe gym and for the high school. So ESA, just so you know, they did not present to us. So they did not ask to be considered. So we have 9, 5 of which I would consider local, and 4 were probably more national. So we're gonna discuss with Mr. Fulbright how to do that. But Mr. Hickman just wanted me to let the full board know we are moving forward with that. We did open construction manager proposals as well. We had 5 that proposed to have our attention. We are not sure if they all meet the qualifications, so tomorrow morning, that's what we're starting to dig through. Same thing with architects, we're just gonna dig through and make sure everybody's up to par, and then we'll follow direction from there.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
I was just gonna say, to make sure we don't get audit findings, can we just make a motion to do a budget amendment that's consistent with what Schiffer's trying to do, as far as specifically referencing those? Usually when we have a motion, like, and I'll go back even to the salary study, there probably should have been a budget amendment attached to it, so we're not waiting a month to do that.
That one, I was gonna bring a budget amendment back at the work session, unless
Right.
you guys do want that one to go this month as well, 'cause anything that passes tonight that needs to go to commission will end up at budget on Monday.
Yes.
So this one, the 4 million, I was gonna take it to budget on Monday, that's why we need that. But if y'all do want the 23, almost 24,000 for the,
I think we're circumventing our own policy, our own procedures.
technically, we've
the way
been
we're
told
doing
not
it.
to bring any budget amendments to the school board meeting, so that's why there wasn't any attached today.
And that is the way we have been doing it and should be doing it. It should have gone to the work session, but that's not the action we took tonight. Unless we take what we did tonight and bump it to the work session to get more clarity and more, is that?
I think you all can still earmark funds without actually having a budget amendment. I just needed guidance that if this is required to get, when the wording was said that the commission, you guys were passing this to get it to commission, I wanted it to be out there that I do not have a document to
I
take to
can't
commission.
speak for everybody else, but I don't see a big rush for us to have to do this by a certain deadline. I would like to see it go to the work session and then be voted on officially on October 12th. I mean, that's my take on it. Now, I don't know how that corresponds with what we just did and the vote we just took.
You can still earmark funds without a budget amendment. If, the only reason I asked it is if you need the commission to approve it in the month of September versus approve it in the month of October. If it needs to go to commission in September, I have to have a document that went, that was approved.
I don't know if I can speak and make that decision unilaterally or not, but I don't feel like we're ready to put that in front of the commission. Any,
This is just an accounting procedure of where the money's going. Don't you think?
But it sounds like their concern is the fact that we're supposed to vote on budget amendments that we see prior to the meeting, not make up a budget amendment during the meeting and vote on it.
So,
Is that your point, Shifra? The issue is not necessarily anything other than we're supposed to be able to see the budget amendment before we vote on it,
The GLs and the amounts get voted on, and
rather
that's
than
what
make
I
up a budget amendment during
Yes.
the meeting and vote on it.
So-
That's where the audit finding could come in.
Yes, the audit looks at what's in the minutes from every board meeting. The work session, they'll look at it, but what's actually at the board meeting agenda is what every board meeting agenda gets reviewed by audit. Every budget amendment that passes in the budget, in a audit, in the board meeting or the full commission, every resolution, every budget amendment gets looked at by them. So if there was a budget amendment that they see that connects from the board meeting in September to the commission, but there's not an actual document attached, they want to see the approval flow where the board said, we did appropriate 2 million to this GL and 2 million to this GL from the fund balance. So that GL breakdown for me, if we have a different GL in the budget than what you all approved at the meeting, that's a finding. So that's what I was trying to get to. If we don't have a physical document attached, somewhere in the minutes, it just needs to say that the board did not have a budget amendment, but they voted to take out $4 million out of 141,39,000. That's where we put the funding last year for athletics. And I just talked to Eric, and he's okay with us putting it all together because that's one of those line items that we don't use unless you all appropriate funding. So the only reason I was asking is if I have to take something to the commission, I have to have it in the minutes that that's what was approved with GLs and amounts. That's how the county side does it too. If something comes to a committee, and it wasn't on the agenda as a document, then Daniel usually will have the committee members or the person requesting it announce the GLs and the amounts or any corrections, announce it, and then that way it translates into the minutes.
which is what you guys just did. I mean, essentially that's what you did. So it would go now to the county in September with the annotation for those GL accounts.
Yes.
And the first question is
And
gonna be,
I-
what are they spending this money on? And we
And
still have an
I
answer
will,
for that.
tomorrow morning, I was gonna create a document in how you all receive the budget amendment documents from me to sign. Mr. Fulbright gets them every month. You will get a document that will have this all documented in it because that will get on the board
Okay,
county
Mr.
agenda.
Howe, I think we're about wrapped up with this anyway.
So, I mean, once again, we've approved a salary quote that doesn't have a GL in there at all, so,
Yes. That was the one I asked if you all wanted it to wait or go, and y'all said to bring that one back at the work session. So I'll bring that one back, but if the 4 million needs to go to commission on Monday
It
at the
doesn't-
budget committee
I
meeting,
don't
then
know
I
that it-
need
I mean,
to see into this.
we've done this several times where we approve things and then the next meeting we do a GL code to do that.
Correct.
So
So
budget
that,
amendment.
and that's where I was coming
Yeah.
in saying, if we do that, then the commission doesn't approve this request till October because you have to vote it at the work session and then the next actual board meeting
I
has to
believe
pass
that's what
it.
we did with the $500,000 last time. I believe exactly what we did.
Well, I mean, 4 of us wanted it to go to the work session, 6 of us didn't, so I guess that it's going straight to the county commission on Monday.
And with that being said, can we have those GL numbers, just so it's
Yes.
on the record, and
Yes.
we'll append that to the motion that was passed?
Okay. So the GL, we're gonna take 4 million out of 141-39000. And we're gonna put it in 141-72810-799. Just 4 out of fund balance and going into the maintenance account for 799.
You can, or by acclamation, you can allow us to amend the motion, whatever you wanna do. I mean, I think that was the implication of the motion, that it go into the account necessary to be expended, or spent. So it's up to you, if you wanna do it over. Or without objection. Without objection, yeah.
That's what, my next question was gonna be. Now that we have clarifying general ledger numbers. Have a motion to accept that, seconded by Mr. Howell. Mr. Moore made the motion, seconded by Mr. Howell. Any discussion on accepting the updates? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Yeah, do we need to do this, recorded vote, or can we do a voice vote on this? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Unanimously. All right, that clarification has been added. Number 5, policy. Anything under policy? All right, sounds good to me. Any other, bids or anything that we need to be made aware of? Seeing none? All right. Just a reminder, our next work session will be the 21st. The regular board meeting for October is pushed back a week due to fall break. Just make that change on your calendars. Okay. Mr. Williver, I'm supposed to talk to you.
There was some reference to a hearing. Do you wanna have an attorney-client meeting?
That's the way I'd
real
like to
quick?
do that, yes.
Okay, but before we adjourn, I think that's what we're just
Okay.
making sure.
Then let's do that. Let's go back to executive, what? I know, that's why I wanted to, that was my plan anyway. I just didn't know if we need to do it during the meeting or outside of the meeting. Will you come back there with us for this? Okay, that was just a procedural thing, I didn't know. I should have stepped in and said that. Okay, thank you for your patience. We definitely had some issues to tackle, from the attorney-client side of things. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion by Mr. Sims. Do I have a second? Second from Mr. Moore. This was one I did not want to die for lack of a second. All those in favor, you can get up and leave. Or you can vote on the computer, it just popped up too. I think technically, according to Robert's Rules of Order, you do not have to take a vote on the adjournment, but for the Murray County Rules of Order, we will. And that will pass unanimously, I feel quite certain.
I apologize about that whole thing. I didn't know y'all were emailing